Now, the FC Reporters Show is here in all its glory. The latest episode has dropped now. Look how happy everybody is. Here's a quote. This is James Olley on Raheem Sterling.
Now, my understanding was that his availability was circulated for probably a couple of weeks before he went. And I think, you know, deadline day when he moved to Arsenal, that wasn't the first time Arsenal had been offered him. But I was told that very, very late in the window, it was actually Chelsea who dropped their demands for Sterling and basically said, look, you know, we need to get him off the books. We don't need to accept a loan fee, and we'll accept you paying less than half of his wages. So we are in this quite bizarre position where Chelsea are actually paying Arsenal around £10 million to play Raheem Sterling.
Wow. A lot more behind the scenes, and it's a really in-depth article that James Olley has written over on the website. But not just James Olley, there's also been some additional reporting as well that has come from our very own Gab Marcotti, who joins us now. Gab, when it says additional report, how much do you have to contribute when it goes from additional reporting to written by James Olley and Gab Marcotti? Did you do that much, really?
You know, we all have different strengths. This is, we all talk to different people. No, look, basic journalism. People have different sources and they speak to different people, and you paint a picture. I contributed what I knew. James did most of the legwork and he wrote the piece. We got help too from Tor Christian Carlson. So, yeah, it's a team effort, man.
That's a very serious answer. Thank you, Gab.
Is this a new show?
What? Yeah. Me and Gab?
No, not you. No, not this. This is not
Oh,
new.
you haven't seen the... Oh, you were away.
Well,
yes.
He wants to be on it.
You want to be on the reporter. He's not a reporter,
one second.
He's not allowed.
No. The football reporter show.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
About time that lot did some work. That's all I'm saying. Shaq and I holding this place up here. Not you.
Right, Gab. I want to ask you something, and that I don't get, and can you explain it in terms that I will get it? Nico Jackson had a contract till 2031. Why have Chelsea extended it to 2033?
So there's essentially two answers here. One is when he signed his original contract, there were certain benchmarks in there, and that if he hit those benchmarks, he would get a raise and an extension. A similar situation with Cole Palmer. This is kind of a standard thing Chelsea have written in there. There's also the fact that in Palmer's case, you know, if you wouldn't, I mean, Craig will know this, if you do well and you want to get a pay rise, from an accounting perspective, from a legal perspective, it's a lot easier and more straightforward for the club to give you more years rather than just give you a bump. The reason this seems odd is that they all have really, really long contracts. So now they get even longer. And, you know, Nico Jackson, you know, it's under contract at least 40 or thereabouts. Not really 40, I'm joking. But yeah, basically that's the reason. If in a couple, if he wins the Ballon d'Or, you know, scores 30 goals, and this is obviously one of the criticisms of the Chelsea approach, is that in a couple of years, Nico Jackson might come back and say, hey, whatever I'm earning now, you know, whatever, 100 grand a week, 150 grand, whatever it is. He's like, look, I scored 30 goals. I deserve more money. And then Chelsea will have to extend his contract even further and give him more money. Or, and this is why Chelsea have the model that they have, they'll say, okay, you won the Ballon d'Or. We can only give you this much more. If you want to go somewhere else, fine. But you've got 8 years contract remaining, or 6 years, whatever it is. So we'll put you on the market and we're going to cash in.
Shaki, your face during that exhibition was quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, because I think it was a thought of Nico Jackson winning the ball. Which I know was tongue-in-cheek from Gab as he was making a point. But those two things just don't sit together. They just don't.
I'll tell you what kind of alerted me. Gab starts by saying, Craig would know this. If you do well, I don't know what you're trying to say, Gab.
Oh, no, Gab, yeah.
I don't know what you're trying to say. That's the next thing he says after
I never did well.
Listen, to Gab's point, and I kind of understand the explanation, but what benchmarks did Nico Jackson hit? Is my question. I mean, let's be honest. He didn't exactly.
There's a pun in there somewhere.
No, I'm just. He didn't set the world alight. Let's be honest. So unless the suggestion is that those benchmarks written in were just that low that somehow Nico Jackson has managed to achieve those, and that's prompted a two-year
Right.
bump in contract, and I guess I can only assume a minimal raise in money. I guess that kind of makes sense, but then so little that Chelsea does.
He's got 9
makes any
years
sense.
left on his
Well,
contract.
I mean, to be honest, I think we're hitting our benchmarks here. To be honest with you, you know,
It's International Week and we're here. It's go on, Gab.
No, we can joke about this, but and I know it's difficult to wrap your head around. But essentially, Nico Jackson, and look, he's raw. He's got, you know, he didn't set the word alight, as Shaka said, but he came in. He was Chelsea's starters. He was a starter last season on a team that qualified for Europe, right? I'm pretty sure that he is by far the lowest paid center forward out of all the Premier League sides who qualified for Europe last season. So from Chelsea's perspective, he filled the role. They qualified for Europe. He wasn't making much money. He got a bump. He's still not making an enormous amount of money. And so he hit that benchmark. It's a different way of thinking of football. That's one of the things that James gets across in the piece, that, you know, they're viewing these people as assets to be monetized. They're viewing them as investments, so they have benchmarks. And if things break down, they feel that because most of them aren't on high wages, that they can always monetize them by selling them to other clubs, getting money in, and buying more players. That's essentially the business model.
Gab, what was interesting, this article, really good article, by the way, mostly by James Olley, and you look at it and it takes us through some of the anecdotes, obviously, of the time that Todd Bowley's been there. One that's striking is the fact that he refused to bid 13 million for a player, instead 14 million, because he felt 13 was unlucky, even though 13 would have got him the player. Overall, it just paints this picture of just chaos, Gab.
Yeah, look, without question, there was a tremendous amount of chaos in that first summer, right? When Bowley was playing director of football, him and Thomas Tuchel. I mean, one basic rule is that managers are not good directors of football. There's a totally different skill set. And owners, especially if it's Todd Bowley, are not particularly good ones either. That's why Chelsea then changed. And, you know, you can look at this and say there's absolute chaos this summer. And I think there is, but for some of the reasons that we heard, right? I mean, in the end, they couldn't shift Raheem Sterling. I think it was their plan all along to go and shift Raheem Sterling over the summer. They just did a bad job of it, and that's why ultimately they had to do it on the last day of the transfer window. And, you know, as James said, you know, they're paying Arsenal £10 million, or they're paying Sterling £10 million a year for the privilege to play for Arsenal, right? Which is dysfunctional and chaotic and whatever else. But there's two parts to it. There's the plan, which might be good, might be bad. It's certainly very different. And then there's the execution of that plan, which hasn't been great, certainly in terms of moving these players on. They found it much more difficult. You know, they would have sold Trevoh Chalobah if they could have this summer. Instead, nobody meets their asking price, and he ends up going on loan to Crystal Palace. So there's a lot of, it's not just Sterling, there's a lot of, or Chilwell, or all the guys we know, there's a lot of little situations like this